think we can start the conference. So good morning, afternoon, or evening, everyone. So as president of the Geneva chapter of the Global China Connection Association, it is my great pleasure to welcome you all to the 9th panel of our 2021 GCC Global Summit. Global China Connection is a non-profit organization for university students and young professionals of all nationalities interested in China's emergence in the world. Our chapters are present in North America, Asia, and Europe. Because of the ongoing COVID-19 pandemic, our annual Global Summit, which is one of the most renowned student-run conferences focusing on China, has been an online event with several panels on many topics of interest. Today's conference will focus on cultural exchanges between China and Europe in the 21st century. We have invited 4 renowned speakers to share their opinion on this topic, and we're really looking forward to hearing their presentation. So because 2 of our speakers have not yet joined the conference, we will start with the presentation of Professor Basil Zimmermann, Director of the Confucius Institute of the University of Geneva, and then we will hear the presentation of Ms. Ying-Tzu Yuan, President of the Europe-China Foundation. So without further ado, let's start today's conference, and Professor Zimmermann, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Malina, and and please call me Basil. Maybe we can go American style, not too formal. So I will share my screen. So, yep. So as requested, I prepared a speech. I imagined something like 15 minutes, but I can easily give a lot more details if people are interested. I wanted to focus on my own experience. It's a broad topic, but in Geneva, there's something special with the Confucius Institute. And I've been running this building, actually, this institute, and running it for 10 years. Oh, I see that Professor Bart Design has joined us. Hi, Bart.
Yes.
Good to see you again.
Basil.
Yeah, I'm going to speak about you.
Long time.
Yeah, like 14 years. My God, it's
you did count it. I didn't count it, but
yeah, I did. But you will understand in 1 minute why, and people will discover it at the same time as you. This is interesting. So yeah, so I was starting my speech. I go back to this. So what you see on the screen is a building. It's an amazing 19th century house next to the lake in Geneva. And the window that's open, that's my office, actually, with the view on the lake. It's like a James Bond movie. It's very unreal and unusual for academics. So what's the story behind this, and what's going on in Geneva exactly? We built over the last 10 years cross-disciplinary research and teaching center on contemporary China with a focus on scientific diplomacy. So what does that mean actually in the details? It's in keywords. I'd say that it's a place where you try to have exchanges, meetings between China and the West. So Switzerland, of course, but also Europe, and sometimes even other countries like the US, or people from North America, from South America, or Africa as well, or other countries in Asia. It's cross-disciplinary, meaning we try to touch anything that could interest the university. So goes from medical science, social science, mathematics. I will show a couple of pictures later, but pretty much anything. And then we try also to go outside the university. So we are not only academics, we also work with the international organizations, NGOs, and also companies, the private sector. Usually the way people see me inside that building is like this on the screen now. So that's my like short presentation or bio or whatever. But the Institute is very much related to my personal background, and also the choices that we took eventually are related to things that happened before. And this is why I'm so happy to see Bart's design today. It very much started with him, actually. And so for me, the key, like the origins are anthropology and STS, so science and technology studies in connection with China. It's something you can see on the cover of my book. I like very much what the graphic designer did with this book, so I tend to use it to explain. It's I started my career as an academic by trying to become a musician. I remember in the US, the statistics are like, I think half of American citizens tried to be a member of a rock band at some point in their lives. So as many other people, I wanted to be a musician. I failed somehow. And but I was trained in music, electronic music, and this is how I approached China. I ended up doing my PhD on electronic music in China, and I ended up thinking about cultural exchanges, academic exchanges, about cultural difference through music. You can see this on the picture, as I just mentioned. It's that the idea on the cover of the book is that with the same materials, so the same grains of sand, some people would make a cathedral like in Barcelona, like if you know the Gaudi architecture. And some people maybe in China, they would do something like the Great Wall. So same materials, but different hands, different culture, and then a different shape. So I mean, through this music, this personal interests, and then the things I studied at the university, I met China. I ended up studying Chinese musicians, what they do compared to what we do, and so on. And then what happened is, as I was realizing that I would not become a professional musician, and then I got an offer to do a PhD, decided to study music in China. And in this process, Bart Design invited me to the China Europa Forum in 2007. And that's the first and the last time I met him. Actually, today is the second time. This is why it's so interesting and nice. And this forum had a huge impact on my thinking, because it was amazing. There were 1,000 participants from like 500 from China and 500 from Europe, basically. We met in small groups. I was in the group with Bart in Ghent during 2 days, and then 2 days in Brussels, like the 1,000 people together. It was very, very interesting in many, many ways, but things that remained in my head until today was the idea that you can improvise a conversation. There was no plan. I was invited to get there, and I said, okay, what should I do? Should I prepare my presentation? And the answer I got at that time was, no, please don't prepare anything, because if you prepare, then you will not discuss. If you want to discuss, you should not prepare. So, and then everything was like that. We were just discussing whatever comes. There was a topic, and then you improvise. You start to exchange. The second thing was that we were always trying to compare what's going on in China, what's going on in Europe. Can we learn something from that? And then there was this idea that you can have small meetings and big meetings, and that you would meet a lot of people, and that something would happen on the long run. And it's exactly what happened to me. That the people I met in 2007, thanks to Bart Design's work and the invitation, are the same people we signed the agreement with for the Confucius Institute. Many of my connections come from that one meeting. So it was very instrumental in my career and what we built later in Geneva. Then, because the topic of today is cultural exchange, so where's the culture in this? The culture is here, and I'm using this picture because a second experience that was very important for me was that, so in 2007, I just finished my PhD. I was, in French, we call it maître assistant. It's like some junior assistant professor. And as I was starting my career at the university, like with a real job, the Olympic Museum in Geneva asked me to invite Chinese musicians for concerts, music concerts. So I did that. I invited DJs for like really like electronic music as you know it, like on dance floor stuff. And there was VJing and, but very normal, I would say. My God, there were more people coming to protest for Tibet than people to come to listen to the music, because everyone was getting crazy about what's going on in Tibet. And then these music concerts, they became, and the Olympic Museum and the Olympics in Beijing became a reason to come to these concerts to protest. And it was a disaster. It was really bad. And nobody was happy. I think it was, I mean, it remained in my head like something you don't really want to happen. I'm not saying people should not protest. Of course, people who want to protest should protest. But that, what happened, the way it happened, it was not very useful for anyone, I think. I mean, my own experience of that one event. So then later on, now I'm just going to give you a very short overview of the Confucius Institute. In 2009, my university asked me to be the director of a Confucius Institute. And at first I said no. I said, I don't want to be like an administrator of something. And then they said, like, it's an empty box. You can do whatever you want. And it says culture, but you can decide what is culture. So then I realized that there were many, many Confucius Institutes around the world, but I realized that everybody was in the universities was concerned about how fast China was progressing on the scientific side. So the universities had this huge need to answer the fact that China is the future of science. I mean, it's happening now. It's already a done deal somehow. And I also realized that the Confucius Institute is really an empty box. So the London School of Economics, they did this Confucius Institute for Business, London. That's a screenshot from 2010. So we could also have a Confucius Institute that would be something different. We could use this idea of culture in a creative way, I would say. So I started to work on this idea of scientific diplomacy. Like, it was very clear from the start that because of the image I showed you, that a cultural event in the sense of a music concert, an exhibition in Geneva, where you have all these NGOs and the international organization, it's most likely going to fail. You're going to have protests, everybody's going to get angry, they will shout at each other, and the next day you can close it. However, Geneva has this tradition of diplomacy. So if you can make something that makes sense, where people can meet, they can discuss the way I experienced it in 2007 in Belgium, then maybe there is hope, like for a dialogue or something that would fit the university and like answering something for the future. So we signed a partnership with Zhenmin University with the professors I met in 2007 in Brussels. And we ended up organizing our activities like this. We have lots of events. It's the same pattern as the one I experienced in Brussels, in Ghent. We always have people from China, people from the West. We don't ask them to prepare too much. We try to have them exchange freely. We have research projects because we want also to train local experts. We have courses, a lot of language courses, because language is usually considered neutral. So that's fine for everyone. And also it's a huge barrier when you want to work with China. So I think we have to help people like go over this barrier. And then of course we do also like some sort of matchmaking, consulting stuff that the university needs because they lack specialists of China. China, one of the differences I learned in Chinese universities and Swiss universities is Chinese universities want you to send them pictures, a lot of pictures. Whatever you do, you have to take a picture and you send it. So I have like thousands of pictures. I'm just going to show you like a few pictures to make it more concrete what we are doing. So this is the first event, criminal law. and we focused on financial crimes. That was at the same time when you had this big scandal with the Swiss banks. So it was also a way of criticizing ourselves. With prosecutors from China, lawyers, law professors, and the same on the Swiss side. This is an example of a cultural event. So you'd say, like, what? You just said you no culture, no music concert. You did a music concert and a religious music concert. So the answer is yes, but every time we do this, there is a conference at the same time. So it looks academic, and it is, because you're going to discuss the culture through the science, and everybody agrees that the science is neutral, where the culture usually is not so neutral. It's very much, it tends to be used as a tool, a political tool, much more than science. This is the example with mathematics. This professor is very famous in China. He's a Fields Medal and professor at Harvard and Tsinghua at the same time. We did one on space technology. This guy is the first Swiss astronaut. This is a professor from the famous Harbin Technology Institute, very much linked to the Chinese military, if you heard about that. And we compared. Switzerland has many, many years of studying like space technology. We're a tiny country, but we have this history, but of course you cannot really compare what's happening in China and Switzerland. This one is on psychiatry. This may be the more sensitive topic we did, because the situation in China was quite difficult, and now it's getting much better, but it was a difficult topic. This is another cultural event. Like, we invited wushu masters or kung fu masters, depending on how you want to call it, to give a training. But at the same time, again, we had a conference about gesture analysis. And so we mix again the science and the culture. Archaeology, again, we mix the culture and the science. We had an exhibition, but we have professors in archaeology commenting on it. Anthropology of religion, this one we are very proud. It's exactly at the same time there was the big problem with Xinjiang and the camps in the media. We had a workshop on Islam in China at the exact same time. And people could discuss like what's going on with Muslim groups in China, but in a scientific way. We are scientists, so we try to like keep this profile, and it worked. I'm not saying we can solve problems, but at least we can contribute in doing something. And then there's the pandemic, of course. So now we are just to confess, we are online as everyone else. And so that was one on technology and cultural diversity with a professor from China and some other people. And this is just the language courses, just to say that we are still a Confucius Institute. We're just trying to push our way on the Geneva side. And I stop here because I reached my time. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Basile. It was a really interesting presentation. Thank you very much, because it highlighted the importance and role of academia and mixing science and culture for cooperation and for this kind of exchanges. So now we will have the presentation of Ms. Yingzi Yuan. So the floor is yours now. Please share your screen.
Hi, hello everyone. It was really great, the presentation of Basile. So I got a lot of information as well myself. So yeah, thank you. And yeah, so maybe present myself first. So my name is Yingzi Yuan. I'm Chinese. I am the executive president of the Europe-China Foundation. And so just to maybe give you a quick idea of the organization, I'll be able to share my screen first. Can you see it?
Yes, we can see it now.
Cool. So yeah, thank you for the kind invitation. So our organization is a nonprofit organization, and we are based in Paris. So our goal is to be the bridge of culture and innovation between Europe and China. So culture, of course, is one important part. And we do think that those two keywords cannot be separated, because culture is not only heritage. You have to always update it to keep it, on the wave of the current era. So that is why the two keywords are linked one to another as well. So Our mission is to communicate between the two regions, between Europe and China, and to provide as many insights as possible to the leaders in different industries. So we are not only working in economics industries, but also with policymakers, with academia, with scholars, etc. So we're working with those different leaders in different industries to promote mutual understandings at the same time in a cultural point of view, but also in a society point of view. And we also want to promote open dialogue, also, for instance, regarding those political issues that was mentioned by Professor Zimmerman. So that is one huge chunk of our work, is to promote the dialogue and mutual understanding. So the goal, of course, is also to create synergies and help each side to grow and thrive. So we not only focus on the theory, on the communication, but we also want to do some concrete projects and the programs to promote, the real development of the industry of each region. So that is another part of our work. So we have a lot of different activities, programs, and initiatives. For instance, we have a cultural exchange. We also have a Europe-China accelerator and incubator. So that is more like a business part of our work. So I wouldn't be mentioning too many details today, but basically it is a program that is open to European startups and Chinese startups so that they can have synergies with each other and then to develop or explore the other market and then to develop globally. So that is one of our programs today. And also I will be mentioning the other program. The Young Leader program is pretty much linked with cultural exchange as well. So I will be mentioning it later. So regarding cultural exchange, so we have 4 pillars. The first one is the creative industry. The second one is youth and education. The third one is around art and heritage. The fourth one is around innovation. So in each and every single one of these pillars, we think that Europe and China has their advantages, has their strengths, and also has their drawbacks. So what we want to do is that we want those two regions to learn from each other. And our role as a nonprofit organization is also to communicate and also to create synergies between those two regions and to facilitate the development, to create some concrete programs that I will of course mention more details later. So when it comes to creative industry, as previously mentioned by Professor Zimmerman, and also I think another speaker in our panel, Cristiano, is also doing an association promoting this creative industry part between Europe and China. I think apart from film and audiovisual industry, maybe presented later by Cristiano, there are also other scope and other sectors. For instance, historically, we had a lot of exchange between Europe and China regarding literature, regarding theaters, regarding music, that is done also by Basile. But also, I think the idea of culture is changing, is innovating. So today, when we are talking about culture, we're talking about creative industry, we're not only talking about films or music, we're also talking about social media, we're also talking about virtual reality, we're also talking about animation industry and the gaming industry. So because we all observed that this trunk is a missing trunk during the past decade, we didn't have enough exchange in terms of cultural exchange regarding those industries. So we are trying to fill this blank. So let's say virtual reality industry is a great example of how Europe and China can be complementary to each other. So on the one hand, China leads the world in virtual reality adoption. It is a huge market, and then people are very keen to adopt new technology, and they're willing to try new things. So when I was attending, for example, virtual reality conferences in Europe and in China, a big difference that I noticed is that the parents in Europe, they will be like, wow, this thing is new. I don't know the impact of this technology. I don't want my child to try it, right? But in China, the parents will be pushing their kids, even though they're afraid, to say, come on, try it. It's like new technology, please, come on. So that is a huge cultural difference in this industry. And then we can see the result is that the adoption rate of virtual reality in China is the highest in the world. So on the other hand, in Europe, we have a huge amount of cultural heritage and technological know-how regarding this industry. So European companies and professionals, they are creating a very high-level content with great storytelling, with great design. So this is one important point around Europe-China cultural exchange regarding virtual reality content. So one example is the picture you can see on the right. It is a content called Venga, the immersive content, the immersive experience. So it's a location-based VR experience, and it was produced by a Belgium-based European company and was presented in a national museum in China. So this cultural experiences has attracted a huge amount of audience in China. So those people, they're keen to try and to experience, to know more about the European culture through new technology. So that is one showcase that can illustrate a huge number of other this kind of content experiences that has been format of cultural exchange between Europe and China. So we can say that there is a complementarity between Europe, China in creative industry. So not only in virtual reality, our organization has also multiple initiatives and partnerships to help both regions discover the complementarity and collaboration in other sides of creative industry. Among them, there is a video game industry. So we partnered with ITU, International Telecommunication Union, with their annual WSIS forum. So we explored the impact of the video game industry in social issues and education and in well-being. Also in September 2019, we were invited by Bordeaux region in France to participate in a tour of local incubators, companies, and introduced also the Chinese market and the state of art of innovation and technology in China. So let's say the gaming industry's particularity, because it's also at the same time content, entertainment, and also technology, right? So this makes synergies between Europe and China very fascinating from both a development point of view and investment point of view. So European companies and professionals are creating great content with fabulous storytelling and design. And China's strengths, like before, it was a huge market, right? But now its strength is not only a huge market, but also a lot of investment and also rapidly accumulating know-how and yet to be discovered Eastern cultural heritage, because in literature, we already observed kind of the wuxia genre has been trending in Western world, but in the other industries, we haven't observed this phenomenon yet. So it is going to be a trend in the future. So in this term, Europe and China's collaboration can help each other grow faster in all the abovely mentioned sectors. So as I mentioned, another pillar of Europe-China cultural exchange is around youth and education. And of course, there are a lot of universities and institutions have been signing agreements, and also there are great work done by Confucius Institute. So we are not exploring that piece. We're not going to take that approach. So we chose another approach to help young people, both from Europe and China, to explore in a professional and business world. So we have this Young Leaders Program that is selecting a group of, let's say, rising stars from Europe and China in different industries together to discuss issues of common concern, to meet with each other and to meet their tutors, let's say, of local and global specialists, and getting to know, the big picture of the business world. So through the program of Young Leaders, the participants can join the community, can learn from each other, can collaborate with each other, and also there will be a group of alumni. So the alumni will be able to help each other to develop in Europe and in China in the professional world. So outside of academia, that's one program that we are doing to try to help youth to educate themselves in the professional world. And also regarding innovation, that is another pillar of cultural exchange. We have this series of events called Europe-China Innovators. So what is Europe-China Innovators? It's actually a series of webinars regarding innovation in both regions. So we have a variety of different topics. For instance, during our previous event, we had a speaker from Alibaba France, who was actually the co-founder of Alibaba's office in France, who shared the experience of culture difference in the corporate world, how to deal with the French client as a Chinese big, huge tech titan company, right? We also had a speaker from the investment world, for instance, Leon Ge, who is the Asian lead of Partech, which is based in Paris. So he talked about how startups can develop differently in Europe and in China, and how European startups can develop in China and vice versa. And also another example is academia. It's Professor, sorry, the name is Giagli, hope I pronounced it right. So he shared a very interesting topic around digital currency in China. So it is called a CBDC, so the central bank digital currency. This kind of currency is not yet being developed fully in Europe, but is already being employed in China. So it is very important and interesting for him to share the observations in China, so that these innovations might impact European countries' policymaking and innovation in the future. So that is yet another point of cultural exchange that we have around society, around policy, around everything, because culture is never a standalone thing. It's always under a socio-economic and political context. So we have also some other events. For instance, a speaker was sharing around social e-commerce, which was a business model actually created in China and is already being trained not only in Asia, but also in Europe. Because of the internalization of certain Chinese platforms, not only TikTok, but also some other companies. So this is very interesting as well to see how the business model in China is being exported as well. So I think I wouldn't mention all the events, and those are just a couple of examples of the recent events. And so I think my time is almost up as well. So we are continuing to contribute to the cultural exchange and also innovation exchange between Europe and China. And if anyone of you are interested, you are also welcome to contact us to participate in our event and webinar. maybe also to join our community and maybe even participate in our programs, right? So feel free to send an email to our organization, and looking forward to your questions and the future information. Thank you.
Sion, thank you very much for this very interesting presentation and also the interesting example you brought. The one about virtual reality really stuck with me. I think it was really on point with the example you brought. And I think now it's then time for the third presentation of today. So Professor Desagne, if you could please share your screen.
Yes.
Hello, good afternoon.
I will try to do so, sorry. But then I will first have to, let me see. I hope this functions well. Yes. Okay. Yeah.
Yes.
Okay. Good evening to you all, and thanks for inviting me. And my apologies for joining a few minutes late, as I just finished a class. I have the bad habitude of teaching from 4 to 7 on Fridays. So, okay. I am Bart Desagne, and I am currently the president of the European Association for Chinese Studies. The association was, I will try to, does this function? Yes. It was established in 1975, and it, as you see in Aims and History, this is the website of the EACS, international organization representing China scholars from all over Europe, with currently more than 1,200 members, founded in 1975, and registered in Paris, a non-profit organization not engaging in any political activity. So yes, in 75, if you go back, if you have a little bit of the history of the association, in 75, this was, I would say, the beginning of academic research on China. If you look at European universities, we have been dealing with China, of course, also the university to which I belong, Ghent University. We had a professor dealing with China, a very famous one, already at the very end of the 19th century. But this was, you know, a rare figure in the sense that, you know, well, there were some in all universities, probably some people dealing with China, but sinology as a scientific discipline was only created, one can say, later on. And it was in the 40s and the 50s that in European universities, Chinese studies were officially, let's say, established. And then gradually from that came the idea that there should be something as an association that groups all these Europe-based China scholars. And so in 75, the old, let's say, sinologists of Europe, all the famous sinologists of the period joined the idea, yes, let's create an association for Chinese studies. Now, if you look at these old sinologists, this was what were we doing? Philosophy, Confucian studies, some literature, but this was not a very important topic at the moment or at that time. History, of course, and we can all look at, you know, still used today, Cambridge History of China. I mean, this is the work of these first generations of China scholars. And I think that was about it. Philosophy, predominantly Confucianism, some early studies on Taoism, classical literature, and history. And of course, as China developed, also the field of China studies developed. And if we look at our about 1,200 members we are having now, this is really, I mean, the whole spectrum of China studies. We do still have, of course, those very fundamental philological studies sinology started off from, but we also have, of course, nowadays people dealing with politics, with religion, with education in the sense of Chinese language education, with psychology, all you name it, and we will have members in the association dealing with that. Now, we are an Europe-based association, and it's good that you asked me, because I see now that some of the text is outdated. If it says representing scholars from all over Europe, even that is no longer the case. The majority of the members are indeed Europe-based, but we do have an increasing amount of American scholars. This is not very recent. This is development already, I would say, in the 90s. And more recently, we also have a lot of Chinese scholars joining the association as a member. The organization system is that we have a member of the board. This is the most recent one. And the members of the board are Europeans or scholars who are affiliated to a European university. So in this sense, it remains a European organization, but the membership is worldwide. And you can see, I mean, well, people from France, Germany, Italy, that's me. I'm from everywhere. Tallinn, UK, Latvia, Czech Republic, and so on and so on. So it's really a very diversified membership, and this, I think, is a good thing. Well, everyone who is European or who is affiliated to European university can nominate himself to be elected to the board. And as you know, things develop, we do indeed see that we have a very big regional European spread, which I think is a good thing as, you know, representative of a European or European institute should indeed, I would say, also cover all the differences we have culturally and otherwise within Europe. What do? We have a few major activities, which is a 2-yearly conference, a 2-yearly summer school, a constant library travel grant, which means that you can apply for funding to the association to cover the expenses to visit a library, to do research work in libraries, oftentimes works, manuscripts that are not to be taken out of the library or that you cannot find in your own country. It's so. And recently to that we have also, and this shows how indeed content-wise we are changing. Recently, that is since 2 years, we also have extended the library travel grant to a museum travel grant. So people working in visual arts can also apply for a grant to do research at a museum for Asian art in Europe. What we also have, and this is connected to our 2-yearly conference, that is a 2-yearly Young Scholar Award. So in which young scholars can send in a article, and this is then judged by specialists in the field, and then there's a presentation of the shortlisted candidates on the conference, and a winner is chosen. And this is, of course, or can be important, of course, for young scholars for their future career. And what we also have, and you see it here on the website of our association, that is since this year, we have, well, I should say last year, 2020, we have a journal of the European Association for Chinese Studies. We thought that as a very mature association, academic association, we should at least have our own journal. And we decided to have an independent journal. In the sense it's online. It is produced by the association, so it's not produced within a commercial publishing house. What we do in the journal is thematic, and we also try to, as you know, be true to the European diversity, to also include, for instance, translations of important articles, but which have been published in, I don't know, in Croatian, which no one reads except the Croatians and aligned countries, or things like that. So, or what we also do is kind of revive, I mean, the history of European sinology, some forgotten articles by some great scholars. It happens. We will also, if they were not in English, we will translate them to English and publish them in the journal. So it's kind of, you know, we also have a contemporary, of course, a hotspot, things that are hotspot in academia or in the media, and we will also give room for articles relating to this hotspot or a hot topic. So there is, it's different, it's academic, of course, I mean, it's peer-reviewed, but it is owned, let's say, by the association, precisely because we want to be true to the European spirit of unity in diversity or something, and get out of the mainstream academic journals. So this is what the association is doing. It's academic, so I'm not able to show you wonderful pictures as the other speakers have done. You will have to do with this very boring website, but today we made a decision to have a modernized version of our website. So this was in the meeting this morning. So wait a few more months and we will have a flashy new website. And so, yes, I have been trying to preside this association now since 2016, which also means that my constitutional term is almost finished. So, but that is what it is. How do we work on China-Europe relations? Well, we do it indeed in an academic way, in the sense that we research a variety of topics, as I said, from contemporary literature over language education and contemporary economics to the history of the Communist Party. Name it, we do it. But this is, of course, also, and in that sense, I think it is indeed important that we also have these big conferences, and that we also have memberships from around the globe. because academic work is, of course, no longer, I would say, confined to the study room of one single person. Also in Chinese studies, we need each other. We collaborate, we get ideas from one another. And in this sense, I would say, Basil mentioned the word discussion. There is, of course, academic discussion, and this is, resulting also in joint publications or even in individual publications, but individual publications, which would, of course, not be possible without dialogue. And this is, I think, a very important thing. And I do think it's important also, and then I come to what you, in your nice invitation, said, how do you see the future of things? We are, you cannot deny it, living in a period of intensified relations between Europe and China. And if you look at myself, by the way, I do philosophy and political philosophy. So I will now go a little bit from this perspective in the rest of my talk. So as I said, we do live in periods of intensified tensions between Europe and China. If you look at the EU strategy for China, China is said to be a partner, of course, but also a competitor, of course, and also to be a rival. So 3 all in one: partner, competitor, and systemic rival. And this, I would say, has, this is typical, and I don't criticize the text as such, but of the European Commission, but it is a typical result, I would say, of how you look at things. Sometimes I say political institutions, organizations, economic organizations might, sorry, I was looking, I saw a orange light flashing, might or easily will identify China with a system. China is an economic system. China is a political system. China is a cultural system, but China is not the people living there. And I think this is a very big difference from sinologists and from people who know China. When I think about China, I don't think about a system. I think about the people I know there, who live there, who work there, and so on. And I think this is very important also, and also has an important academic perspective to that. It is indeed true, knowing the language, communicating with the people, that you see indeed people, and the people-to-people dialogue will, I think, become in the rest of this century more important. We need people, also academics, who see China as a country of people, not as a combination of systems we may or may not like. But this is also mutually, I would say. There is a systemic, almost, to use that word, lack of mutual knowledge and understanding. And I think also there that the academia, and this is also what I think is very important and what I am doing, there is the need for academia to also reach out to the larger audiences. This is something I like to do a lot. I mean, I give in pre-corona times, I had to give a lecture, so to speak, every week somewhere for a general audience. Now this is a little bit less because of the digital world, but well, it starts to revive again now in the digital way. But it was a kind of difficult probably to get people accustomed to it. And I do hope we get back to the physical world very soon. But I think this is also an important element of academia. I would say no, much more than ever, and that is the outreach to the general community, because this will, I would say, help to de-absolutize China. China is not something absolute, something, it's, you almost have a reified China, to speak in philosophical terms. And I think this hinders mutual understanding. Which brings me to some quotations. I will, they are short, so, but one is by, and I think it's very interesting, one is by Adorno, Theodor Ludwig Wiesengrund Adorno, with his full name, who said about culture, culture, he says, I quote from The Culture Industry, selected essays on mass culture by Theodor, with all his names, Adorno. Culture, he says, no matter what form it takes, is to be measured by norms not inherent to it and which have nothing to do with the quality of the object, but rather with some type of abstract standards imposed from without. And I think this is a very interesting thought, that indeed we kind of project some norms, some categorization on cultures, and then see this culture in a kind of an absolute, and he, to use the word of Adorno, almost administrative category of culture. And I think this is, of course, cultures and traditions are, I mean, we speak about cultures because of a tradition, because of a continuity in time, but this changes. China of today is not the China of 10 years ago, and is not the China of 50 years ago. And even the China, I would say, in Shanghai, is a different China. It's a different modernity than the China in Sichuan, and it's still a different China than the China in Anhui province. So I do think that...
I'm sorry, I have to stop you because of time constraints.
Yes. Yeah, sorry.
I apologize.
So,
just because we have one more speaker.
Finish my argument. So I do think that it is very important in mutual understanding towards the future that we de-absolutize China. And we can do that by profound academic research that reaches out to the general public.
Thank you very much for your presentation, Professor Dastan, and for highlighting the importance of people-to-people dialogue and academic research. So we have now our last speaker of the day, Cristiano Bortone. So if you could please now share your screen and start your presentation.
Yes, first of all, Marina, can you hear me?
Yes.
Yeah, okay, because I think I hear some strange echo. That's why I came late. I had some technical problem. Okay, so we should be able to see the screen.
Yes, we can see it.
All right. Yeah, can you see that? No, yeah. Can you see that? Yeah?
Yes, we can see it well.
Okay, so welcome everyone. And I will propose a different, another angle in this discussion. I speak from the side of more artistic and commercial, let's say, point of view. I'm a producer, director, film producer, film director, And I'm, since a few years, the managing director of an association called Bridging the Dragon, which is the official Sino-European Producers Association. So it's a platform that connects film producers from these two continents, let's say. In the last, the association was created in the beginning because, of course, Chinese film industry, as most of you may know, is become, since 2018, has become the biggest film industry in the world. This year, even more so. I mean, last year, like 2020, because of COVID. So America stopped basically with the theatrical distribution and so on. And China, as we know, continued. So it has even, although the numbers are smaller, it has even reached a more distance from the US film market. The numbers of course, proportional to the astonishing number of China, as we know. So as you can see, actually these numbers are a little bit outdated because as of today, China has more than 70,000 screens. And just to make a reminder, US has 28,000. So China as of today has 3 times more screens than the US, and nevertheless, proportionally to the population, there is a potential growth to even more. So obviously, this is a huge film market. In the last 10 years, it has developed in an amazing way, and it has become a very strategic market for European cinema, for European movies to be distributed to China. But also the reason why this association was created also ignited and created a desire from both sides to share content, talents. You know, Chinese film industry as of today is very young compared to the European one. I mean, at least the industry we know today. So it is it has a great need of talents, stories, beautiful locations, of course, but also post-production, animation, technology, and likewise. So there is this very big desire from the two sides to connect. But as some of you said before, there is a chronic lack of mutual knowledge, and that's the key for collaboration. You know, if you don't know someone, how can you work together, especially in film, which is such a special and artistic and risky business. So that's why the association was created. We are, as I said, a producer association, and in the last few years, we became really a point of reference. So we became official partners, for example, of big festivals like Cannes. You know, everybody knows the Cannes Film Festival or Berlin Film Festival, the two biggest film festivals in the world. So we organize for them all the events related to China. Plus, we are partnering with many other festivals in China and in Europe. In China, often with the so-called First Film Festival, which is a young Chinese filmmakers film festival, Qinian Dianjie, and Beijing, Shanghai, Zhongguo Artong Dianjie, which is the festival of children film festival. And also, interestingly, the last few years, because I see some of our hosts are beautiful women, young women, we're also partnering with the festival called The One, which is the China Women Film Festival, because of course, the women issues even in film has become a very important theme in China. So basically, we have become a crossroad of whatever has to do regarding movies between China and Europe, whether it's festival, whether it's financing, whether it's copyrights. We support the trade of European films or Chinese to China and Chinese films to Europe. We organize every year a content project lab, fostering new projects from both sides, with tutors from both sides. So we exchange projects, tutors, and stories. We have an office. Our headquarters is in Berlin, but we have a second headquarters in Beijing. So we are actually really a mirroring entity. So we have Chinese side and European side. And yeah, so this gives us a very special point of view of whatever is connecting these two worlds. I would say a couple of comments. Our European colleagues, especially now after the pandemic, unfortunately, I would say European film producers are still a little bit behind in understanding the potential of the Chinese market for reasons which are historical, cultural, whatever. European producers are very much concentrating on our European internal market because it's heavily supported by governments, by fundings. So most of them are, and this is in film, but I would say in many other areas, which is nowadays for us a very big limitation. You know, we feel that Europeans still do not understand the evolution of the world and how China will become, whether everybody likes it or not, that's just an historical fact, will become a major player in the near future. And that's part of our activity, our daily effort to push the Europeans, first of all, to learn more. If people don't, Professor mentioned Adorno, but we may even go back to Marx. If people don't learn something, don't know something, if the lack of knowledge and cultural understanding is the first, if there is not this understanding, this cultural aspect, people cannot cope, cannot confront any reality. So this is the first thing we are trying to do, to coach our colleagues from Europe through seminars, workshops, you know, all kinds of activities to sort of make them aware of this Chinese reality, the reality of the Chinese film market. We speak about film, of course. And so that's on the European side. And that's a major, as I said, is a major effort, which is a risk. The risk is that historically our industry will lose the momentum, you know, because we are not open enough to understand and to start coping with this reality. We're more focused on our little environment, let's say. On the other hand, Chinese, of course, is the Chinese side is of course fascinating because it's very young industry. It's like Europe in the 60s. There is a young audience, hungry for content, super hungry for content and curious of everything, but also a very, very young industry. So most of the professionals in the film industry have begun working in this film in whatever capacity in the last few years, which, you know, like I've been making movies for more than 25 years. When I speak to somebody in China, some of my counterparts, they have started making movies or working in the movies industry 3, 4, 5 years ago, 10 at the most, which is of course fascinating because there is a chronic lack of experience. That's the other challenge. Not having experience means whoever has done something for 20 years has a memory. You know, I remember 15 years ago, I had this problem and I solved it in this way. But whoever started last year probably doesn't have such a long memory. And that's in film, in the area of film, this is definitely a challenge. So these are the two different worlds that we're trying to melt. You know, on one hand, some reality who has a lot of experience, but is too Europe-centered. Like, you know, we think Europe is the center of international cinema, which is maybe not be true in the future. On the other hand, something which is extremely new, extremely excited and hungry, but also sometimes very inexperienced and can make a lot of mistakes. We hope that from this confrontation, I strongly believe, we all strongly believe it will be the future of content, storytelling, and cultural and cultural melting, I would call it, which will shape our world in the next 20 years. And we believe film, of course, is one of the strongest means of carrying cultural elements, through our society. Films is about emotions, stories. So through stories, emotions, many important contents are carried through, whether it's women empowerment or many other issues that you may keep in mind. So this is what we are, and so thank you for inviting us and bringing our identity into this little interesting confrontation. And and then if anyone has questions, I'm here happy to answer them.
Of course, thank you very much for your interesting presentation and for highlighting the importance of cultural cooperation and the role of movies in mutual understanding. So we do have some questions, and I'm not sure if we can maybe invite the participants themselves to speak on camera. I think, yes, so now it should work. So for the people who do have posed questions, you can now simply raise your hand and we might be able to add you to the video conference so you can pose it yourself. So I do see there's a question from Alex Balmelli, one from Chaya Audrey Gendre, and one from Yael Massini. So I think we can start with maybe Yael's question. Now you should be able to participate if you want. Yes, Yael, we can hear you, I think.
Okay, I don't know if you can see me. So
we cannot see you.
Okay, sorry. So thank you all for your really interesting presentation. It was really, really, really nice. My main question will be like, what are the main difficulties that each of your organization face when they want to try to set up new cultural project between Europe and China that maybe you don't face when you want to set up project with other part of the world? It will be just this. Thank you.
So maybe this I can answer for Geneva and Switzerland. It's so here in Geneva, because there are a lot of NGOs and so it's very difficult to have a cultural event here because you have protests very quickly. Also, when there is a cultural event in connection with China, it's very often politically charged. So it's organized by, it could be the People's Republic of China, it could be Taiwan. Sometimes it's the Falun Gong, for instance. So as a Confucius Institute, we just gave up having cultural events in the sense of arts like music and so on. And when I presented, I said we had to focus on science. And science in the meaning also of small groups, because the issue of protests connects with the issue of opportunity. So if you have a lot of people, it's an opportunity to protest. But if you have like 10 professors discussing something very highly specialized, it's not an opportunity. So my experience is that when you have those big troubles at on the international level, it affects cultural events massively. And Geneva is more sensitive, but I think it's the same in other places. And it's a challenge, I think, for artists, because you end up doing with stuff maybe you're not interested in, or you didn't think you connected to that, and suddenly you do.
Okay, thank you very much. Thank you very much for your answers.
Yeah, maybe I'll add on to the question. So maybe I'm pretty lucky in comparison because I've never had a protest for the event, but still there will be some politically oriented questions, even though the topic is totally irrelevant. So that is part of the problematic. And also it is difficult to make the other part understand also the market specificity and also the audience, and so also how the society works, both in Europe and in China, because in terms of cultural content, we all know that there are certain policies and censorship in China, and it is very difficult to explain sometimes how this work. And then also it is a choice for the companies and the professionals to choose whether they want to adapt their content for the local audience or not. So that is one major major question that we faced. Yeah.
Thank you very much.
Yes, I do not organize cultural events as such, only academic ones, but I can only second what both Yingzi and Basil say, in the sense that, and it comes also to what I have been trying to say in my short presentation, that is, China is very, very sensitive. And it also fluctuates a lot. I mean, this sensitivity. And sometimes it's also, when you do not really, when you would not really expect that this topic might, for some reason, be sensitive, then someone may take it up and see it as a sensitive thing. So it is, I think, yeah. The problem of what I pointed out, the perception of China, and this, and I do think that, and I think you have all shown very nice examples. China does have a lot of what is called soft power. But for some way, and in some way, it is very difficult, I have the impression, to bridge to the European audience. And how do you solve that problem? By spreading knowledge. But yeah.
So, Mr. Bortone, do you have anything to add to this question, or
I think already, interestingly, I already mentioned that before. You know, the difficulty that we have. But again, we don't organize culture. I mean, I cannot describe what we do as purely cultural. I mean, unless, of course, we consider film cultural, but we are more from an industrial, let's say, point of view, industrial/cultural point of view, let's say. And mostly we don't do politics. That's something that goes without saying. Many times I had an interview a few weeks ago from a German newspaper, which I try to avoid interviews most of the times, but in that occasion, I was not very lucky. I sort of, my press agent accepted this interview. So I gave this interview, and then after the very polite opening, then immediately the conversation started to take the angle like, yeah, but you make films with China, but then how do you cope with human rights? And what about gay issues? What about the persecution of gay filmmakers in China? But excuse me, but this is not supposed to be the topic of our conversation. We are film producers. So what are you trying to say? Are you trying to say that we should do what? We should build a wall between, like in Mexico, we should build a wall between Europe and China because of any challenge that among our, political differences. I mean, I don't understand. So it's like, if I produce olive oil, then I don't import into China because I have a different opinion about certain issues. I mean, I think you're missing the point. It's not. So So what I'm trying to say is that our point of view is like we are trying to encourage the collaboration and relationships between Europe and China. And so, for example, some people challenge in the area of filmmaking the so-called censorship of content, right? Which makes European very concerned all the time, right? But first of all, it's not the main issue of making films with China, first of all. And in any case, if these are the regulations of the Chinese industry, if you want to make a co-production, for example, we try to support a lot of co-productions, right, between China and European countries. If you want to make a co-production between China and Europe, you have to comply to the existing regulations. If in the future the regulations change, fine, that would be a different scenario. But as long as these are the regulations, if you want to make a co-production, official co-production with China, you have to pass censorship. If you don't want to pass censorship, you're not going to make a film with China. I mean, there's not much you can do from the industrial point of view. So, but I mean, of course, these are issues that are, you know, because of our systems are so different. These are issues that are reason all the time, and they're also subject to right, you know, thinking and elaboration. Yeah, that's also fair. But yeah, we try to cope with we try to have a very objective and practical point of view. I mean, I hope this answers. I mean, we could discuss about this for 6 hours. I mean, this is just a small contribution, of course.
Yes, thank you very much. Thank you very much for your answer. You all talk about the difficulties in your presentation, that's true. But at the same time, it was like really a point that I wanted to hear more about. So thank you very much.
I think we lost our chair. So maybe we should make a special effort and go on with the question without Malina.
This is anarchy. We can take over, the conversation.
Cool.
Our host is not with us anymore. You can
I
conquer the platform. Yeah.
I'm going to answer the second question about the social media, maybe. And first, I'm not sure because I go less. I'm getting older. I'm less on social media than I used to be. Hey, Malina, it's good to see you back.
I'm really sorry. My computer shut down for some reason. I apologize profusely.
Censorship. Sorry, just kidding. I was commenting on social media. I want to say that my experience with Facebook and WhatsApp and WeChat is that people in China, if they want, they can access it because they have ways of accessing it. It's just slower. So you have to be motivated because it's going to be slow and boring. And they used to do this a lot 10 years ago and now less and less. And my feeling, it's not because of censorship, because they still have ways to connect. It's because it's becoming less interesting to do that. And the social media in China is much more interesting. And also it's more developed now. The future of social media is in China already. It's not on our side, on Europe or US. So I think maybe there's some kind of a moment when there's less, the role in cultural exchange is different. And I think it will get bigger when more people start to use WeChat here. If it happens, maybe it gets blocked by Europeans and Westerners. I don't know, but I can feel that if now you can use WeChat a lot for everything, people will jump on it. I mean, everyone likes this app, obviously. Yeah. But maybe, yeah, this image of China is going to prevent people from doing so because they will be afraid that could also be something. That's my feeling.
All right, I think we can then go to the next question. So I see that there's Matthias Christen with a raised hand on the chat. So since we have 5 minutes left, Matthias, if you want to maybe I think you should be able to unmute yourself, or just if you're not able to unmute yourself, write down the question in the Q&A section. Oh, okay.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Thank you very much for today's presentations. I may have a question regarding handcraftsman and arts. How is the current situation regarding arts and folkcraft between China and Europe? And regarding the exchange, maybe aesthetic or trading, teaching of it. Yeah. And is there any interest of develop such an exchange from the official or the civil parties? Yeah, that's it.
Maybe I say it very quickly, and then Yingzi, I see you unmuted.
You are a pioneer. You always icebreaker. Good.
Thank you. What I wanted to say, I think I can also comment on Alex Balamedi's question. I think China is still very much interested in Europe and the US, but it depends what are your strengths. For instance, the strengths of Italy are not the same as Greece, or so craft is the same. I think if you have a tradition wherever you are, China is interested in this, and you can have a lot of exchange, but you have to start from you. And the Chinese will be interested in your strengths. That's my take on this.
Yeah, thank you. Exactly. So I totally agree with what Basil said. And then also there are more and more spaces like museums, either private museum or public museums, and people actually need this kind of content or services or product, or let's say culture influence. So they want to have different experience and want to know more about it. So definitely from each and every single point of view, I think there is a need in Chinese market for that. And in terms of channel, like for now, it is a special moment. It's difficult to say because traveling or commercial exchange is quite different from a normal life now. But if I can also answer the question from Alex in the question box, it can get better or it can get worse. It doesn't answer any question, but I'm saying that this is a sensitive moment, as all of you already said, and it is important that we or us as small individuals or organizations or academics, we do this little progress to help mutual understanding. And then the big picture might change, might not change, then we did our part. So that is part of the reason why we are doing this and why we have this conference. And hopefully we're heading to a better future between mutual understanding instead of, political tanglement, etc. Yeah.
Yeah, maybe I can chip in. Yeah, I think what Yingzi said is it is very important. I think, we don't have a crystal ball, so we don't know where the world will go. I mean, this pandemic is showing, how unexpected things can go in the human society. Maybe tomorrow we will be aliens. I mean, after this pandemic, I think the next step would be the aliens coming to planet Earth, and then maybe we discover, parallel realities. Yeah, so then, whatever, who knows? But as far as it goes now, we have seen in the last decades with the so-called globalization, right? So the world becoming smaller because things are getting more and more interconnected, with pros and cons. you know, positive elements and negative elements. It depends from the point of view. Now, also because of this crazy situation of the pandemic, but not only, for many, as an answer to many challenges, we are seeing also a counter phenomenon, which is the localization. And this is happening also in China. From my perspective, which is again, let's say artistic, you know, content, we are a little bit like a radio of new development of human society sometimes. So if you see what happened to the Chinese cinema in the last 2 years, our Chinese friends can confirm or not. There has been recently an interesting phenomenon of closure. So which means Chinese industry is becoming more developed. Chinese movies are getting better. Pandemic has closed a lot of borders. Politics has closed a lot of borders as well. So basically, the Chinese industry this year is very much concentrating on Chinese local films in Chinese language, with Chinese content, talents, whatever. Even Hollywood movies. I mean, first of all, there is no Hollywood movies, so that could be the first answer, but it's too superficial. It's not only because of that. There is a phenomenon of localization, of relocalization of culture. Middle class is rising in China. People are wealthier, more cultured. The new generation is developing. So China is more and more proud of itself and its own power, its own content, its own image, etc., etc., etc. You know, they go to Mars now, although we have to say the rover is doing better than the Chinese thing. But I'm joking. But what I'm trying to say is that China is becoming more and more self-confident. And I would say not only China, if we see also as a result of the pandemic, the whole world is breaking. US is the same, you know, after the age of Trump, it has created a micro zone, you know, on its own, you know, trying to, and so in Europe, for example, many countries, you know, they have new nationalism, you know, they all want to go by themselves. So there is this phenomenon, anti-globalization. So and of course, according to different point of views, this could be good or bad, you know. I think it's bad. I personally think that the exchange of cultures historically in our race, human race, since the Neanderthal, you know, whatever, the exchange of culture and races has always been an improvement in the development of our societies, in the development of new ideas, in open our eyes to, you know, see things from different perspectives. So I do share, I agree with Yinze, probably what culture can do and what, you know, associations like, you know, in their own area, whatever, what we can do is definitely to keep on promoting this understanding, mutual understanding. I speak some Chinese. I'm a little, for many years, I'm aware of Chinese culture. I know certain elements of Chinese cultures, and I know how unique they are. Most Europeans don't know. I sometimes make a joke. I always say Chinese know us more than we know the Chinese. That's might be true, but nevertheless, also the majority of Chinese also don't know enough of the European point of view. So this merging of cultures, this merging of through social media, through movies, through industry, through fashion, through whatever, music, will still be very important. The moment we start building walls and we believe that we're going to survive on our own, it's the moment that we are giving away a lot of opportunities for all of us, not only economic, but also cultural and social and medical. Like, look at what happened with the pandemic. You know, if we could all share since the beginning information, vaccination, if we didn't also start this thing of mutual suspects and who is fault, and it's my fault, it's your fault, the vaccination is mine, I'm better than you, you know, probably we could resolve problems in a more efficient way. You know, that's maybe our hope. So yeah, so that's, thank you for this kind of confrontations, and I look forward for more to come and to keep the flame of this confrontation alive.
Thank you very much for all of your answers and all of the questions from the public. And I think with this question, time has come to close the conference. So
Come on, Marina, this is a very short time. This is a very important topic. We need to talk until tomorrow morning. You know, there is more to this.
I know, sadly, we only have 1 hour and a half, so we are already over time, but I think there was some really interesting and important conversations happening, and it's definitely important to keep talking about this, which is also why with the GCC annual conference, we're going to have more panels on more interesting topics. So for all the public who are still present, please check our site and see if there is any other panel that might interest you. We're going to have many other events also within GCC Geneva itself. So I think now I really wish to thank the speakers very much for your really interesting perspectives and for sharing your insight about the cultural relations between China and Europe. And I really hope we might collaborate again in the future. This was a really interesting conference, and I think it's as
next time physical, Malina. Next time physically, okay, with the glass hopefully. Of rosé wine on some nice lake, you know, in Switzerland or in Berlin or in China.
I am in South Korea right now, so COVID actually makes the situation easier.
We like South Korea. Why not?
So yeah, hopefully we'll be able to have other interesting events in the future. And again, I thank you very much for your participation and for sharing your insight, and thank to the public for the interesting question they posed.
Thank you, Maria.
Yeah.
Thank you, everybody. And yeah, keep in touch if you want to dive into the wonderful world of cinema for any reason. Yeah, feel free to get in touch, and to the participants as well.
Thank you very much again.
Good night.
Everybody have a nice evening.
Thank you. Bye-bye, everyone.
See you. Goodbye.
Yeah, see you soon. Bye.
Bye.